Charlie, how did you get a confession out of Randolph Dickerson? Now, Randolph was a heroin addict who lived upstairs in an apartment, and downstairs lived a woman who sold Bible for a living. And he had jimmied his way. He went down the fire escape and jimmied his way into her apartment with a screwdriver and was rifling through her drawers for money when she surprised him. He proceeded to stab her to death with the screwdriver. And then, at some point, Charlie Burke set him down, and Randolph Dickerson confessed. And I said to Charlie, how did you get that confession from Randolph? And Charlie said, these immortal words to me. They want to tell you, Charles. And I didn't believe it. I was just too new. But I found, yes, many want to tell you. And I saw the O.J. Simpson evening on TV the other day as O.J. Simpson wanting to tell us. He would only go so far, and it was rehearsed and scripted so that he wouldn't cross over the line. And even then he did, as you both observed. Even then he did speak in a way as a person confessing.
We watched that and listened to it and watched it. Did he have help? I mean, was he indicating that there was someone else there with him?
Oh, that was just nonsense.
Okay,
and,
all right.
Yeah, Charlie.
Right. Yeah.
Charlie was there.
Okay.
Advising him.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
So I hear back from Sharon 8.5 years after we last spoke. And he had been to church, he had received absolution, and he wanted to confess to me. And we spent 5 years together. He told all of his mafia pals that I was writing a book that would clear him of any involvement in Hoffa's disappearance, while all the while he knew that he was confessing serious crimes to me. And all of that has since been, over time, corroborated. The book, I Heard You Paint Houses, came out in 2004. I Heard You Paint Houses means I heard that you kill people. And the painting of the house, the paint is the blood that splatters when you whack a guy. And he loved Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa was his mentor, his union mentor. He worshipped Jimmy Hoffa. But he was put in a position, Frank was, where he had to kill Hoffa or he'd have been killed himself. And it gnawed at him. And I had been raised Catholic, and I knew the buttons to push, in addition to the regular interrogation techniques. For example, in talking about Hoffa's murder, one of the interrogation techniques that I would use, and I learned from other detectives, is to blame the victim. And so I would say, Frank, look, Hoffa knew the rules, and he knew the consequences if he didn't play by the rules. He was ordered to stop talking about the mafia's takeover of the Union Pension Fund on his crusade to win back the president of the Teamsters. He was also told not only not to talk about the mob and the Teamsters, but he was told to retire. He was told to spend time with his grandchildren. And he was very defiant to these mafia bosses. And, he had it coming, Frank. I know this is shameless. I hate to even say it, but I once said to him, Christ, Frank, I'd have killed him myself. And that eases the burden of guilt on Frank and makes him more easier to get information from.
Charlie,
ended up...
I'm sorry to interject here, but I got to ask. You said that he was put in a position where he was told to kill Hoffa or he would himself be killed. Do you believe that to be true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, not only do I believe it to be true, but I believe everything that he told me was true. except those times when I knew he was lying. And I knew that I would get the truth out of him. When you have a guy for 5 years, you don't have him on the witness stand for an afternoon. And since then, the book came out in 2004, things that he told me have all been corroborated. We start out, he told me that he personally shot and killed Crazy Joey Gallo in a famous mob hit at Umberto's Clam House in New York's Little Italy. The prevailing story, there were two movies out on it, and half a dozen books. And all of them said that Crazy Joey Gallo was killed at his birthday dinner at Umberto's Clam House by 3 Italians who burst into the place and began shooting at Gallo. Well, when Sheeran confessed to me that he killed Crazy Joey Gallo, my first thought was, come on, 3 Italians, not some 6'4", 220-pound Irishman. 3 Italians went in there and shot the place up. And I had Frank, as I said, for 5 years. So anything that he told me today, I could ask him about 2 months from now and make sure that I was getting the truth out of him. And he said, if they want to take credit for it, that's okay with me, but I did that work. And he described how he did it. The book came out in 2004 in May, actually Memorial Day weekend. And that very week, the first week, an editor, a distinguished editor at the New York Times, a female editor, who was the national assignment editor, which meant that nobody wrote wrote an article that had anything to do with the nation, either politics or sports. Nobody wrote an article unless that article was assigned to that person by her. That was her job. Well, she had been at Umberto's that night. She had witnessed the killing of Crazy Joey Gallo. She was given the book by another reporter who knew. She opened to the pictures section, looked at the first picture of Frank Sheeran, and said, oh my God, this gives me chills. That's him. It was a lone gunman, and that's him. After that, there's a pretty famous New York detective who's the late Joe Coffey. But I wrote an article about this editor at the New York Times who didn't want her name used, although she later filmed a segment for PBS, and where she repeated that claim and picked Sheeran out as the killer. Anyway, I wrote an article about it for Playboy, and this detective, Joe Coffey of the NYPD Organized Crime Homicide Unit, called me up and said, you've solved it. I let the story of 3 Italian gunmen out there. I let it stand out there in case informants came to me and wanted to tell me how I could find the 3 Italian gunmen and wanted some money from me. It was an integrity test. I would know that they're not telling me the truth because there was no 3 gunmen. There was 1 gunman, and it was this big giant of a man. And so these cases began to get corroborated, one after the other after the other. And that's all in the latest version of the book. There's 57 pages added to the book of corroboration. So that's how I know that what he told me was the truth, in addition to my own instincts as an interrogator, and in addition to my having had him for 5 years to myself. So any other questions, gentlemen?
What about the body of Jimmy Hoffa?
Well, Frank was told that the body was taken to, with the help of, like, Nasco's funeral parlor in Detroit, the body was taken to a crematorium that was just minutes away from the house in which Hoffa was killed. Sheeran and I found the house. He remembered the directions. He remembered, burned into his memory, where the house was. And I rented a Cadillac to take him out in style and drove him to Detroit, and we found that house. And we chose not to go in it because the last time Frank had been in it was when he killed Hoffa. And he described it fully in the book, what the inside of the house looked like. And so Frank was told by Russell Buffalino that the two cleaners who were in charge of cleaning up the house after the hit, the Andretta brothers, Steve and Tommy Andretta, with a document that was given to them from Bagnasco's funeral parlor, took the body to a crematorium minutes away and burned the body. I went to that crematorium and turned on the gas jets, and my God, it could have burned down the city of Detroit. In an hour, there's nothing left of the body of Jimmy Hoffa.
They get hot, that's for sure. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And folks, our guest is Charlie Brandt. I heard you paint houses, of course, the expanded edition with the 57-page conclusion. You can't put this book down. I got to tell you, this is one of the truly one of the best books I've read of this genre. So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I read a lot, and I wanted more, after the additional 57 pages. So, congratulations on that, and so, certainly looking forward. I got to ask, when is the film coming out with De Niro and Scorsese?
Okay, they started filming. Well, first off, I was invited to New York, and they put me at a hotel for the months of June and July last year. And then I helped with the script. And then they began filming in September. The filming just ended 10 days ago. I was in New York for the final shoot on the set, and it is such a powerful movie. It's impossible to believe how many great stars climbed aboard this project just to be a part of it. And it's scheduled for release Christmas 2019. Now, that's a year and 10 months away, but there's the technology they're using to de-age the principal characters through the years, so that Sheeran might start out as a man in his 70s, but he ends up as the 30-year-old. And so this technology alone takes 18 months to edit. In fact, I spoke to Pablo Hagmann, who invented the technology, and he's the one that told me 18 months. And then another member of the staff had told me Christmas 2019 is the target right now. So my only hope is at 76 that we're all alive when the book comes out. But it's going to be quite a masterpiece. Martin Scorsese directing, Robert De Niro as Frank Sheeran, Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa, Joe Pesci as the mafia boss, Russell Buffalino, Ray Romano from Everybody Loves Raymond as the mob attorney, Bill Buffalino, Bobby Cannavale as the mobster, DiTullio, Skinny Razor DiTullio. I got a little confused because there are two DiTullios in the story, and the other DiTullio is Whispers DiTullio, and he's played by Paul Herman, a well-known character actor, and you'd recognize Paul in a minute. He's in just about every De Niro movie. As well, they created a role for Frank Sheeran's daughter, Peggy, who was estranged from Frank. Right that weekend that Hoffa disappeared, he disappeared on the 30th, and on the 2nd of August, Frank stopped by his then ex-wife's house to give her money, support money, and he was a very generous man, Frank was. And his daughter Peggy was there, and she had seen on the news about Hoffa's disappearance.